The stunning view from above tonight revealing the path of destruction. At least 3 people are dead after fast-moving storms plowed through the Midwest.
Near mile marker 199.
Dangerous twisters.
It's okay.
Tearing across Illinois.
That's freaking crazy.
In the small town of Naplate, howling winds splintered this neighborhood.
It was like the finger of God. It was just wiping the slate clean. This isn't a devastation anybody should go through.
A home ripped off the foundation.
In Missouri, a tornado near Perryville ripped apart homes for 13 miles.
You can see those cars tossed about.
And flung cars off the interstate. The powerful line of storms raced east today, winds gusting to 60 miles an hour, 104 million people in its path. Hail pounding parts of Alabama. The relentless wind and rain toppling trees in Tennessee. This little boy surviving after one split his living room in half.
And we heard a bang, and that's when the tree came in and hit us.
The storms tipping this trailer in Kentucky. Today, communities are flooded around Columbus, Ohio, after fierce storms there. Back in Illinois, Melissa DeTore says she rode out the tornado in her bathtub.
I just hunched over my dog and just prayed that we didn't die that day. And we didn't.
She's thankful their lives were spared when so much else wasn't. This is what's left of Melissa's block. Remarkably, everyone here survived. Many of these families are being helped by the Red Cross tonight. And we've just learned the tornado here was an impressive EF3, packing winds of up to 165 miles per hour. Lester?
Blake McCoy in Illinois tonight. Thank you.
Testimony you're about to give before this committee.
During his confirmation hearing almost 2 months ago, then Senator Jeff Sessions was asked about his contacts with Russia. Here's what he said.
I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians.
But the Washington Post says Sessions spoke to the Russian ambassador to the U.S. twice last year. A former high-ranking staffer in the Justice Department says the evidence may have come from phone calls intercepted by the National Security Agency.
Communications would have been captured by the NSA. Even the communications, one that he said that he had in his Senate office building with the ambassador. So it seems to me that the intercepted electrons are not going to lie.
Sessions denies the allegations and said in a statement to Al Jazeera, "I never met with any Russian officials to discuss issues of the campaign. I have no idea what this allegation is about. It is false." The Justice Department has also released a statement saying Sessions' answers weren't misleading during his confirmation hearing. It says Sessions had more than 25 conversations with foreign ambassadors when he was a senator. The Democratic leader of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, is among several high-ranking politicians calling for Sessions to step down. She says that Sessions is not fit to serve as a top law enforcement officer of our country and must resign.
We're just here to start the process.
The allegations surrounding Sessions follow an announcement by the U.S. House of Representatives Intelligence Committee that it is to investigate allegations of collusion between President Trump's presidential campaign and Russia. Last month, Trump's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, resigned following revelations he misled the vice president about his contacts with the Russian ambassador in December.
Jeff Sessions.
Trump has repeatedly dismissed allegations of collusion as fake news, spread by critics opposed to his policies. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
Market loved it. That was President Trump on the stock market's performance since his election, and today, the Dow hitting 21,000 for the first time ever. Investors seem to like what the president had to say last night. Lori Rothman is at the New York Stock Exchange to break it all down for us. It's like a party down there today, Lori.
The folks are jubilant down here, Melissa. As you know, we had a pause leading up to today's huge session because investors are really concerned that Trump would drop the ball last night. And as you know, he just knocked it out of the park. He delivered and then some. So essentially, the traders here telling me that Trump really locked in his promises and reassured investors that the gains we've seen in the market since Election Day, something like 14.5% on the Dow alone, 2,600 plus points, are justified. So, hey, it's no holds bar. We're up over 300 points right now on the Dow. Leading this market really since Election day, or since 2,000, 20,000 to 21,000. Apple, Goldman Sachs, Boeing, so a broad range of industries there. He talks about infrastructure spending. Infrastructure stocks are just absolutely on a tear. Look at that, Dycom, U.S. Concrete. I mean, these stocks are up almost 20% today. You also have defense stocks climbing. No surprise, the promise to bump up defense spending. Look at, you might not have heard of a lot of those names. They're not like Boeing or some of the other household Lockheed Martin type names you've heard of, but they're still critical to our defense contracting in this nation, and they are benefiting greatly. All-time highs, a lot of them today on the broad markets, and on the Dow in particular, you're looking there. You've got Home Depot, Goldman Sachs. Again, these companies really leading the way. Melissa, back to you.
Wow, reflects the expectation that the economy is really going to grow. We'll see. Lori Rothman, thank you so much.
18,000 homes in Gaza were destroyed during the summer 2014 war, according to UN estimates. Slowly, they're being rebuilt. The lives that were affected can't be put back together as easily. 2,202 Palestinians were killed, 11 of them from the family of Jamal al-Halo.
All of this destruction and losses because Israel says there were tunnels 3 years after the war, and we're still suffering. It's the civilians that paid the heaviest price from Israel's war.
The tunnels were the main target of the 2014 ground invasion, but Israel's comptroller pointed to a previous report that said the military had no tactics nor appropriately trained personnel to deal specifically with the issue. In the months before the war, Israel's security services warned that what it called the difficult humanitarian situation in Gaza would lead to grave consequences for Israel. But the comptroller says the cabinet never discussed these warnings. Gaza is one of the most densely populated areas in the world, and Palestinian civilians get no say in where Hamas fighters decide to operate from. Salih al-Helo's husband died when Israeli artillery shells landed on their home. She's left with 3 children to bring up.
Most of my family was killed during the war. My children ask, "Where's Dad?" The only thing I can tell them is that he's in heaven. None of my relatives were fighters. They were killed in their homes.
The humanitarian situation the security forces warned about in 2014 is just as bad now, if not worse. Yet despite the comptroller's report, Israel shows no signs of changing its policy towards Gaza, which is effectively to keep the 2 million people here locked in. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Gaza.
Oh.
Let's discuss the speech further, and I'm joined by a member of President Trump's cabinet, the ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Was it a different tone, and was it meant to be different?
It was a very different tone. It was presidential. It was meant to tell the world that America's going to lead again. And I think that he covered a lot of different things, whether it's cutting through the regulations and making sure that Americans get services faster, whether it's making sure that we have more jobs in America that are made by Americans, or whether it's with foreign policy, which is we're going to have the backs of our allies. We want our allies to have our backs, and if we have those that challenge us, we're going to call them out on it.
Because I know some of your allies have been somewhat worried. I was in New York this weekend. I was speaking to an ambassador, I won't say who, but from a country that's allied to the United States, and that person said they were worried. Does the president have to sound like this now going forward for the next 4 years and drop the campaign-style Donald Trump?
I think it's time for him to change the tone, and I think he did that tonight. His goal is to unify the country. His goal is to let the world know that we're for peace and security, and that also we want to make more allies. We want to continue to work on anything that we can that's going to bring peace and stability in the world, and I think he made that very clear tonight.
So a reset?
I don't think it's a reset. I think what you're doing is you're starting with a new president, and a new president that believes that America can be strong when we lead.
You talk about new allies. One of those allies potentially could be Russia. Do you see that's a possibility? I mean, I know you had some initial outreach to your Russian colleague who passed away recently, Vitaly Churkin. Do you see Russia as a friend or foe? They vetoed you, or the resolution that you supported on Syrian chemical weapons just a few hours ago in the UN Security Council.
I don't think they have to be one or the other. I think it depends on the day. Certainly, if we can get Russia to be with us, that's fine. But today, we were very upset by Russia not voting for the resolution that criticized Syria for using chemical weapons on their own people. We have criticized Russia for Crimea and Ukraine and, you know, for the actions they've taken there. So we'll call them out when we see something wrong. If we see where we can work together, of course we're going to try and do that.
Staying on that issue of what happened today in the Security Council, it's clear that you set up a mechanism. It reported, it said that the Syrian government was responsible for using chemical weapons, and yet it's gone nowhere again. Deadlock in the Security Council. Where do you go on that?
It was amazing to actually look at the fact that we knew that chemical weapons were used in Syria. The entire Security Council wanted to find out who was responsible. The entire Security Council agreed on this joint mechanism that would go and find out exactly who did it. They spent a year of investigations. There were 4 instances. In 3 of the 4 instances, the Assad regime used chemical weapons on their own people. One of the instances was ISIS. They want to talk about ISIS. Japan and China didn't like the answer they got. The truth is, the Assad regime literally suffocated to death men, women, and children. And Russia and China decided to cover for their friend instead of saying, we can't allow chemical weapons in the world. It was a bad day at the Security Council.
A final question on Russia, and it's a question I think that's still being raised constantly here in the US, but it's also being raised internationally by some of your allies, and that's the contacts that there have been in the past between the Trump administration, of which you are now a very prominent member, and the Russians. Does there not now need to be a full investigation?
You know, what I will tell you is my job is in New York. My job is at the United Nations. We have called Russia out multiple times for things that we believe are wrong. We are not afraid to do that, and we will continue to do that as we see fit. I think that they're trying to continue to bring something up about Russia here in D.C. I don't think there's anything there, but if they want to keep wasting energy on that, they can. We've got work to do. We've got international work to do. We want to focus on the things that we can change now.
But isn't that being a distraction, though, and stopping that work and worrying some of your allies? Isn't it better to get it sorted once and for all?
My allies know now more than ever that we've got their back. Israel has seen it. Ukraine has seen it. France and the UK have seen it. We're going to continue to show them that. And so I think, and they've seen us call out Russia multiple times. So I think there's nothing to worry about. The United States is strong. We're going to lead again, and we're going to really show the world that we are about peace and stability.
Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us. Ambassador Nikki Haley, the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and member of President Trump's cabinet, commenting on his speech tonight, important speech tonight to this joint session here on Capitol Hill.
Thank you.